All right, so on the line I have Matthew Horrigan. He has represented Australia overseas in Taekwondo. First of all, Matthew, thanks for appearing on my podcast as my first guest. Um, so my first question is, who do you think will win out of this Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker matchup? Whittaker's rise has taken a lot of people by surprise, but do you think he stands a chance in this matchup?
Look, as much as I love how he goes about it, I think Romero might edge him out in this one.
Do you say that because of his wrestling skills? Yoel Romero won a silver medal in the Olympics.
Yeah, I feel like if he takes it to the ground, then obviously he's going to be the one who's got a massive advantage. I'm not so sure about Whittaker's ground game, but yeah, Romero. And what I like about him is that even though he's known as a wrestler, his striking is still unparalleled. Like, he's such a good striker as well. So I see him winning this fight.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But Whittaker, on the other hand, also has good takedown defense. He displayed that with Jacare Souza. Jacare Souza is not so much a wrestler. He's more a jiu-jitsu guy. But you saw in that fight, though, Whittaker had good control over keeping it on the feet. Do you think that Whittaker, the longer he keeps it standing up, the better chance he has of winning?
Well and truly, I think if the fight stays on top the whole time, I think Whittaker will win personally. But I'm just worried that all it takes is Romero to get him down once, and then he could be in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, that's a very good point, especially when Whittaker's strength is he has very good boxing skills. I mean, he packs a hard punch. One of the interesting things about this fight, Matthew, is that they're both kind of smaller fighters, height-wise, in the middleweight division. We've talked about this before. You know, some fighters can cut a lot of weight, and they might be, 6'2", 6'3", competing in the middleweight division, whereas Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker stand at 6 foot each, both of them. So height won't be so much of a factor here. Like, as a Taekwondo, as someone who has competed in Taekwondo, if you have someone who's of a similar height than you, can you still find a way to use your reach to expose the other opponent, or is it more just about implementing your strengths?
Well and truly, you can utilise reach. Doesn't matter what size really you are. Obviously, with greater height comes greater reach advantage. But if you can utilise the distance and work the distance into your favour, that really goes hand in hand with reach. So if you're sort of moving in and out of the distance of your opponent, you're looking at being able to go in and out. You get them guessing when you're going to be, and you can actually hit them sort of when they're not expecting it, almost. Like, you can go, and it maximises your reach. If you're hitting as you're coming in, then that's maximising your reach.
Even though Yoel Romero has really good wrestling skills, the fact that Yoel Romero has to get to Whittaker before he can actually use his wrestling, do you think if Whittaker times it right, he can, land that uppercut or just something that might fluster Yoel as he's coming in? Or do you think that...
Sure.
Yeah.
They both have knockout power. I saw the 3 fights that UFC uploaded on YouTube, and both of them lasted about, I think, a minute and a half, 2 minutes into the first round before they both knocked their opponent out. So I really feel like they both have knockout power, and this fight might not go the distance. It possibly will end in prematurely.
Yeah, and one of the things about Yoel Romero is his physique is incredible. Like, if you look at him, he looks like an amazing athlete. Obviously, as we said before, he's competed in the Olympics. When you look at someone like that, if you're a coach, would you just say, have confidence in your athletic ability, or would you say to be wary of Robert Whittaker?
Oh, you'd have to be wary of him. I mean, you trust yourself. You always got to back yourself no matter what. But you've always got to. I'd be really wary of Whittaker because I think he's stunned a few people based on his previous fights when he's very quick. But and once he's on top of you, he'll just keep going. He doesn't relent. So it's going to be interesting the way it plays out.
Yeah, that's a very good point about his speed because he coming up from the welterweight to middleweight division, he really has that speed advantage over most of the other middleweight fighters. And in my opinion, he definitely has a speed advantage against Yoel Romero. One of the things that you mentioned there is that he has surprised people, including me. Like, I went to the Melbourne event, his last fight. Oh, no, not his last fight. His last fight was against Jacare Souza. But his fight in Melbourne in 2016, I thought Derek Brunson would win. I thought that Derek Brunson, he possessed similar traits to Yoel Romero in the sense that very good wrestler, very good knockout power, but Robert Whittaker really displayed good takedown defense, and although he was pressured, he still managed to come out with the win. Has Robert Whittaker surprised you at all?
Yeah, he has. I think, in particular, from following him early, he won the Ultimate Fighter and started competing in that welterweight division, where he sort of got exposed a bit. I think he wasn't quite. It possibly didn't suit him because whilst he won a few fights, he didn't look as good as he does now. So to step up to that middleweight division has really aided him, and I think that the way that the middleweight fighters are much bigger, they're going to be naturally slower. So that's where he's getting them with his speed. That's his best asset. And yeah, he's got a good chin on him too. He can take a hit. So I find he can stay in the fight. He might eventually wear Romero down if he can stay in it.
Yeah, that's a good point also. Like, his endurance can be underrated. Like, he's very explosive, but he's also shown to be a very smart fighter. The win against Jacare, I mean, I was actually edging towards both Brunson and Jacare in both of his fights. So I was kind of, not that I don't like him. He's a great human being and a great fighter. He presents himself well. But on a fighter's ability, I thought, he doesn't really stand a chance against Jacare Souza, who's an outstanding jiu-jitsu guy. Like, can he actually withstand the pressure there? Performance of the night. Against Derek Brunson, performance of the night, fight of the night. So he's definitely proven me wrong. In terms of whether I'd tip Robert Whittaker or Yoel Romero, I'm going to tip Robert Whittaker. I think his hands, his hand speed and his power might be a little too much for Yoel Romero. Yoel Romero has to get to Robert Whittaker before he can implement his wrestling. But there's also that sense, though, that the soldier of God, they call him, Yoel Romero. So there's also that sense that he has that knockout power. So he's not just a wrestler. He's also a really good martial artist. What did you think of Yoel Romero's flying knee to Chris Weidman?
Well, I thought he was a bit lucky with it. I think from memory that was when Weidman was going for a takedown, was he not?
Yes, he was. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was. I mean, it was obviously extremely well timed, but he got lucky with the way in which he hit him. But yeah, that was a pretty good move. Like, it was sort of, it got the crowd up and about, and if he pulls something like that out, that'll knock anyone out. You know, doesn't matter who it is on the other side. And he packs so much power. He's so well built, and any hit like that will definitely put the other guy out.
Yeah, so what do you think Robert Whittaker has to do to implement his game plan? Because if he comes close, Yoel Romero's still got that power, but if he stays back, you know, he can't really. I mean, well, actually, he can use his reach. Do you think it will be about using his reach, or does he have to come close in order to defeat Romero?
Well, I think that in any fight you have to use distance that's probably the most important thing in any fight. You know, always being on the move and always testing, going in sort of distance and out of distance, and keeping them guessing on where you're going to be, and being unpredictable. So you look at all the top fighters, that's what they implement. But I think with Romero being a wrestler, he's going to have to try and chase Whittaker to get that takedown. So, you know, if he plays smart, Whittaker, whilst he can go on an offensive burst, he can also sit back and wait for Romero to come to him and just pick him off every time he comes at him. So that'd be the way I'd start to approach it. And then obviously it's a situational thing in the fight. If they need to change tactics, they have to, and might have to implement different strategies as the fight goes on. But initially, I'd probably wait and see what Romero does, and then look to pick him off as he comes at Whittaker.
Yeah, and so this is an interim title fight. So the interim tag is essentially what I term as the number one contenders belt. So it's not the official belt, but it gives you like a golden ticket into a championship main event more often than not, which Bisping's injured, so that allowed Whittaker to have an interim title shot there. Do you think Whittaker is deserving of a title shot? Of an interim one, yeah.
I definitely do. I think he's proven himself against just about the best in the division, and he's consistently, you know, they keep giving him harder fights, and he just keeps winning and winning. So I think it's time that he, you know, faces the number one contender in Romero, and then hopefully if he can win up, he can go up and fight Bisping and be that first Australian UFC belt holder.
Yeah, absolutely, and he'd be the very first interim holder as well if he actually gets up against Romero. So
yeah.
I think Mark Hunt, he competed for an interim title against Verdum. Not the official belt, but the interim belt. I think is very. I don't know what your opinion is of this, Matthew. I'll ask you, but mine is that I actually like the interim belt. Some fighters don't like it because it's not the official belt. It's kind of, you know, almost like something that they just give out like for the number one contenders belt. But I think that because you never know what the UFC is going to do, because it's not, matchmaking isn't always based on fighting ability. It's also based on how big of a draw the fighter is. So, for instance, Bisping faced off against Dan Henderson, and Dan Henderson was outside of the top 10, but because he was about to retire, a legend, he got that title shot over Romero, fighters like this. Do you think the interim belt is good for the sport?
In a way, I do. I like it in this situation when the champion is out for an extended period of time or injured. I mean, we saw that with McGregor Ronaldo when McGregor fought Mendes.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that it certainly means that the fight is for something. So it probably, and you're right in that being it's a golden ticket. So as soon as you get that belt, you're guaranteed a championship match. I think it is a good thing. Obviously, I can understand why some people don't like it because it's not technically the championship. It's not your belt, but it's still it still gives you that chance to go for the title.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that Michael Bisping, that if he managed to face one of Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker, he'd be in trouble? Or if you were Michael Bisping, what fighter would you want to face?
That's a tough one. I'd probably rather face Whittaker if I was Bisping. Romero is a very scary prospect, although so is Whittaker in his own right. But Whittaker probably hasn't proven as much as Romero has. So, you know, and Romero is a really scary prospect for anyone to come up against. So, but that is a tough question. I would. I mean, either or, take your pick. You know, either one, it will be a tough fight for him.
Yeah,
I do believe the winner of this interim belt will actually go on and win
Yeah, see that's the general consensus of thought that because Michael Bisping was slated to fight George St Pierre, but that fight was is probably most likely going to be off because of George St Pierre said he wanted the fight later, but the UFC didn't like that. So most likely, yeah, it will be the winner of Whittaker and Romero. I'd have to say probably if Romero wins, Bisping has a tough case on his hands. Not necessarily that Romero is better than Whittaker, but just stylistically, the wrestling that Romero possesses, he just dominate Bisping. But whereas, you know, Bisping has the striking, he's a bit more faster, and Whittaker has the striking as well. So I think whoever wins this belt definitely has a really good chance against Michael Bisping as an opponent. So what round do you think Yoel Romero would get it in? I know predictions can be fickle, but you were saying that, you know, Yoel Romero, he possesses really good wrestling. Do you see? Oh, well, you said it won't go. You said it might not go the distance. Do you see a potential knockout or submission, or?
I'll probably say, like a knockout, a TKO sort of finish. I mean, I could be wrong, but in the past, I don't think either of them have really gone the distance all that often. I think most of them end early. So I could see, you know, a TKO occurring, whether that be the second or third round. I'm not too sure when, but I could see it happening, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. Well, I'd like to thank Matthew for being my first guest on my Fight Lyric podcast, and this fight will be happening this week, and it looks to be a great one. Let me know in the comments if you think Whittaker will win or Yoel Romero will win. It'll be an interesting fight for sure.